Hi, this is John Barnes, and you're listening to Kop On.
Hello, welcome everybody. This is part three of Kop On's fantastically epic journey, a sort of a plunge into the Olympic-sized pool of Liverpool's entire transfer history under FSG. Here to perform synchronized belly flops into the said swimming pool. I've got Kev, aka Spider LFC. Thank you very much. And Shane is back. Shane, welcome. As we left it off at the end of the 15-16 season. So unfortunately, we can no longer discuss legends such as Divock Origi and Bobby Firmino. But fortunately, we no longer have to discuss Mario Balotelli and Lazar Markovic. So in the 16-17 season, the Premier League winner ended up being Chelsea. Chelsea that summer, they signed Michy Batshuayi. He never made it really, did he? David Luiz, who was always a bit dodgy, let's face it. Marcos Alonso, excellent player. But the one that really helped them win the title was, of course, N'Golo Kanté, who we discussed yesterday, and I shan't go into much more detail about him. But on the Liverpool side, we had a big summer, 2016. We brought in Joel Matip, Loris Karius, Sadio Mané, Ragnar Klavan, Alex Manninger, remember him? And Gini Wijnaldum from Newcastle United. It was a hell of a summer, Shane. From those names, who jumps out as someone you would immediately like to discuss?
Gini Wijnaldum. I mean, I saw a highlight of it was Adam Lallana's goals, because recently he announced his retirement, and they showed the cross. I think it happened in a December match from this season. Whenever he crossed it, and we won at the Etihad 1-0, and so and Gini got a thumping header into the corner, and Gini Wijnaldum was such an important part of our midfield there for the first. I guess maybe half or three quarters of the Klopp era, and so let's discuss Gini Wijnaldum.
Well, I mean, what immediately springs to mind is this header, which unfortunately these images that I've got on screen is the header against Barcelona, of course, from the Shaqiri cross, and also there was another one against Man City or something, I'm not sure, it was the Barcelona one is the one that immediately springs to mind. I mean, that game comes the season after, but let's talk about Gini Wijnaldum coming off the bench, the fact that he was angry to have been, left out of the starting lineup. That was epic, Gini. Of course it was. And that header hurled into the top corner. I don't know if you've ever seen that angle from behind the goal, Shane. Have you? Talk to me about that header, or what you loved about Gini Wijnaldum, if you don't want to talk about that header.
No, we can talk about that header. Yeah, I mean, he was vastly important to the miracle at Anfield. I remember being at the Los Angeles Liverpool Supporters Club for that match, and that was actually right before I made my first appearance on this podcast, because I joined in for the post-match to that podcast. And so, yeah, I remember seeing the angles, and especially from behind, and you see it curl, and yeah, it's just plus even I think even the first goal was even more improbable, how it had slipped through the arms of the keeper. But yeah, he's just so wonderful. Plus the song. I mean, we all loved his song for so long, still do.
Absolutely. Is he? I mean, it's pop music, but I don't know who it is. Was that Dua Lipa? Is that right? I don't know. Can you enlighten me? Are you pop music fans? If you're nodding your head sagely. Okay, well there you go. Gini Wijnaldum. I'm gonna be honest. I understood, he was brilliant. I loved him. I would absolutely adore, along with a lot of these Klopp signings and FSG signings, I would absolutely love to one day have a chat about football with Gini Wijnaldum. But he was under, from certain parts of the fan base, a little bit of criticism for the fact that he would sort of go missing in games. I think that, some people completely disregard that criticism and say, well, you don't understand football because he was blocking off passing lanes and he was doing this, that, and the other. And I agree with you. Yes, he was off the ball. He was playing a very important tactical role. But as you know, if you watch Kop On, if you've listened to Kop On before on our audio feed, then I am a stats nerd. And one thing I love to count is the amount of touches that players get in every game. And when you have a player like Curtis Jones last season, who was often averaging around about 90 touches per game, Gini Wijnaldum sometimes would get 25. In fact, fairly often he would get below 40 touches in 90 minutes when you're playing in midfield. And he didn't show enough for the ball. That was one criticism. But here I am picking on the criticisms when there's so much to love, isn't there, Kev? I don't know. What do you think about, either the criticism that he got, or just talk to me about Gini in general?
Gini was important for a couple of reasons, but not mainly for his control on the ball or for, getting involved passing wise. I think he just cut off a lot of angles and laneways without actually intercepting anything. So I think he just spotted dangerous spaces and kind of closed them down. And then, he was more of a very slight anchor player going forward. Yeah, it's clear that he kind of, a couple of people would say he was missed until we got McAllister, but that's mainly because of the downfall of what's his name, Henderson and Fabinho at the same time, over the same season or so. So that's, I think, where his importance of those spaces were missed, because I think he benefited them too, and he did play alongside them. And also, when you asked me about the song earlier, were you asking me about the Gini Wijnaldum song or the Dua Lipa song?
Is it not the same?
No, it's not. Gini Wijnaldum song is this girl by the what is it, Kungs versus Cooking on Tree Burners. I think that's the name of the band. That's it. That's
the song. Thank you very much, Kev. But I'm obviously old because it happened a long time ago, about 15 years ago, when I would see posters in the metro in Paris of music festivals, and if it wasn't anyone from the 1980s or before, I just didn't know who they were.
The same, man.
And so that's another one. So But speaking of, it's interesting you saying about the demise of Henderson and Fabinho contributing to people missing him. But he went to PSG after Liverpool, and he was very much castigated on this side of the English Channel because the PSG fans didn't like him because he didn't get involved enough, and because he had basically those clever runs, tactical runs that he was saying defensively and all that. He wasn't able to do them for 90 minutes because he just sort of burned himself out under Jurgen Klopp. But what a hero. I loved him. I loved watching him play. He was sort of good at everything, one of those players. A bit like James Milner, extremely press resistant. He had this way of wriggling out of danger, which springs to mind. But brilliant stuff. Kev, going back to you, from the other signings that summer, it was a great summer because not only did we get Gini Wijnaldum, we also got Joel Matip, Sadio Mané. Alongside them, we had Ragnar Klavan, Lord Klavan, as they called him on Reddit, and Loris Karius. A lot to discuss there. So who do you want to talk about?
It's easy to talk about the other guys. I mean, I think our third most important free transfer of all time in Joel Matip. You could talk about him all day. You could talk about other things, but it's the Loris Karius one that surprised me a lot. Mainly because he was the second best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga over the 2 seasons that he was, there next to Manuel Neuer. So there was no other goalkeeper in the entire Bundesliga that was as good as him over those few seasons that he was there. And I was like, I had high hopes for this guy coming in. I said, if we get this guy in on the cheap, we can spend more money elsewhere. I was admiring Naby Keita at the time, and I thought, at that stage that we were going to get him in, and then this whole thing about waiting an extra season and all of that for Naby was a big downfall for us. But at the same time, Karius came in with a great reputation. Just if you're second best to Manuel Neuer, who probably was the best goalkeeper in the world at that time, second up by maybe an emerging Alisson and Jan Oblak, who was really, really good around that time as well. It was kind of very hard to see past that. I think I said this could be one of those, early Liverpool astute buys that we could have gotten, but instead, he just turned out to be an absolute disaster, really, didn't he, in some shape or form. So, yeah.
He did, unfortunately. I'm delighted that Neil's here. Neil from the Anfield Wrap. How are you, sir? Are you well?
Very well indeed. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you for joining us. I've been wishing to speak to you for a long time, and I thought it'd be nice to sort of, chuck you in the middle of a sort of Kop On retrospective summer, memory lane, a stroll. And, sorry to bring back some, perhaps some, what would you call it?
Terrible memories.
Shivering in the spine with a picture of Loris Karius, because we're looking at the players we signed in the summer of 2016. Are you of the opinion that Karius was just desperately unlucky in that one match that he was concussed? And, I imagine you're the kind of guy who has a lot of sympathy for the fact that it just, everything seems to have gone, not haywire, but, gone south, as they say, following that disastrous match for him.
So I think he was rockier than was remembered in the run-up to the final. So I don't think that it was, some sort of thing where he was about to sort of really genuinely stake a claim to be Liverpool's goalkeeper. I think he's an interesting signing in that I think he's one where he's a good example of Liverpool not doing a halfway house. So Liverpool could have gone and tried to buy another goalkeeper who wasn't going to be as good as Alisson when they couldn't get someone as good as Alisson. So they get this lad in on a minimum fee release clause, and it's not very much money. So I think that they felt as though that was going to stock them for the position, and I think they had optimism that Mignolet would see the season through. Mignolet, it all goes a bit haywire for, and then you end up with Karius. Karius in the final, I think he does have a staggering amount of bad luck with reference to the concussion. But it's important to say that, he was highly unlikely to have kept his position as Liverpool's goalkeeper going into the following season regardless. I don't think I think that Liverpool were looking to make that change. We're looking to make that step up. So I think that he may well have lost out on what would have been his one opportunity to have a Champions League winners medal. But I don't think in the long run, there may well have been a pathway for him to be Liverpool's number 2 goalkeeper for a season. That could have been possible if the circumstance, if the thing that happens on the day of the final doesn't happen, if it doesn't go so badly wrong, he could maybe have held his place for the 12 months that follow as number 2. But it got to the point, obviously, where I think it was best for everyone if he moved on. But I think it's worth saying that, I think he was bought as a number 2. And I think that his race was run. The idea of him being Liverpool's number 1 by the time we get to the summer of 2018.
It's it's a very interesting answer. Because one stat that always sticks in my head. You were right. He was shaky. Especially on the eye test. But a stat that always sticks in my head from that season is that he basically became our number 1 around January of the 17-18 season when we got to the final. And he, for example, Hugo Lloris in the same period of time was the second best goalkeeper in the Premier League, but only having made 1 error leading to a goal, and everyone else had made at least 2, I think. Apart from Loris Karius, who'd made 0 errors leading to a goal, which is not how it seemed, because you're right. He looked shaky and he would do bizarre things and look pretty dodgy, catching corners and crosses and all that kind of stuff, or punching them away. Or yes, he looked like a number 2, as you say. But I don't know. It's just something that we'll have to. I'd like to put it behind us in this chat anyway. Neil, who else would you like to talk about? We've already spoken a little bit about Joel Matip and Jorginho Wijnaldum, but that summer we also signed Ragnar Klavan, Alex Manninger, don't know how much you'd have to say about him, and Sadio Mané, who perhaps would jump out to me, but I don't know, that's just me. Who do you want to talk about, Neil?
Let's do Klavan first, because I think Klavan's quite interesting, because again he falls into the same category as Karius. The manager in the summer of 16 is shipping a lot of players out. So, just to sort of run through the list off the top of my head, you've got Skrtel in there, you've got Joe Allen, I think, goes that summer, Benteke is going to go, Ilori goes, and he's in this situation where he needs to have footballers that he can pick for the next bit of the mission, which is to qualify for the Champions League in 16-17. And I think Klavan's an interesting player, and in the same way as Karius, in that he comes in, it's not very much money, And you can sort of break Liverpool's transfers in this period into the ones where I think the manager has decided they're in it for the long haul in terms of making a Liverpool team that's capable of challenging Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, which he understands the reality of because he managed Dortmund when Guardiola was managing Bayern Munich. And then there's the ones who are there just to get him through a bit of a period. And I think that if you'd have asked me at the time, I'd have thought that Joel Matip might have been one to just get him through a period. But I think that the manager always had a grander plan for Matip. But Klavan and Karius are in that category. And Klavan ends up having a really respectable Liverpool career. I think he does really well. And I think he's, I think he clearly had a sense of humour about himself that we got to see sort of later on. I think it helps if you're the greatest player Estonia have ever produced. Even if you know that you're not necessarily going to be a regular starter for Liverpool, but you're willing to be part of a squad game. And he was obviously also a leadership type player. It's easy to sort of think of players as leaders when they're captain of the country. But I think there's also different types of leadership around the training ground. So if you're someone who knows he's not going to get that many games, but you're turning up and you're doing your job brilliantly, as Klavan was in the period, then you can lead by that specific type of example. And everyone really liked him around the camp. And I think that Klavan, therefore, I think he's an example of a Jurgen Klopp holding player in this period. Not a player I think that Klopp buys thinking he's going to turn him into a great, but he buys him thinking he can be my third or fourth best centre-back, dependent on how he feels about Joe Gomez in the period. He can be because he's not barely got to manage Joe Gomez at this point because the injury he sustains just as Klopp arrives. My third or fourth best centre-back as we go in to the 16-17 season, and the aim is to qualify back for the Champions League.
Yeah, an astute signing, one of those stopgap signings that we've seen a lot under FSG. He ended up making 53 appearances for Liverpool in all competitions, 2 goals, no assists. Shane, what do you recall? I mean, he's sort of like universally fondly remembered, isn't he, Ragnar, for being so solid, right?
Right, yeah, he was always viewed as like, I don't know, the partner to Dejan Lovren is what I remember. I also remember a goal that he got in the New Balance green and white strip where I think it was like a last minute header. I can't remember. Maybe you can recall. Was it Aston Villa or West Ham?
Burnley away.
Burnley, that's what it was. I knew
one of the greatest moments of my life.
Yeah, I remember those moments stick out very fondly. Unlike Karius, who the bad memories seem to stick with you longer. Klavan, even if he did have mistakes, he did have weaknesses in other areas. We all still look. I mean, it's 9 years on. We still look back fondly on Klavan. So I think that's a testament to him.
Yeah, great stuff. Kev, you can either continue talking about Klavan, or you can talk about we're not going to really discuss Alex Manninger, Sadio Mané, if you prefer. We can move on to the main man.
Oh man, I'd say probably one of the best signings in the last 15 years for Liverpool.
Klavan or Mané? Oh, okay.
I actually like Klavan. I just think he was limited a little bit, but I think he just did the job he was asked to do whenever he was asked to do it, and he did it with very, very much simplicity and grace. He wasn't outstanding, but he just did his job. And that's all you can ask from a player coming in at that position. But no, Mané, I think, Mané hit the ground running with that first game against Arsenal, with that wonder goal. And, from then on, we all thought he was going to go to United, really, didn't he? A lot of us in that summer. And, the fact that he came up for us, and we got him, and he said it himself that he turned down United to come to us. Just kind of showed, that the pull that Klopp was kind of bringing into the club really at the time. So, because he was fairly fresh for Klopp. Klopp came in the season prior, and he was thrown in at the deep end with the cup final, the UEFA Cup final that summer. Which we were unlucky to lose. But I mean, Sevilla were seasoned at that stage when it came to winning European lower level tournaments and stuff like that. So that's all we could ask for. Yeah.
No, but you're right to bring up the fact that he turned down Man United for us. That's actually monumental, isn't it, Kev? Because
huge, yeah.
It's the first time.
It's only a couple of seasons since United were after winning the league at that stage, So
but it's not just that. We started this series looking at the history of FSG transfers, and they took over when Roy Hodgson was still manager. The window before they took over, we signed Cole, Jovanovic, Wilson, et al. This is a huge transformative moment, Kev, isn't it? This is.
The tides were changing at that stage. That's what I'm saying. When you get somebody in like Mané, and he was kind of like the first. I kind of count Bobby as the first of many, but he wasn't a Jurgen Klopp boy, obviously. But just the attitude alone, the change of attitude. And I know Mané was kind of in his own way at sometimes. He seemed really, really humble at some stages. He seemed really, really upset at other stages when he was playing at the game. But I just think if the game didn't suit him or the style didn't suit him, he'd let you know, kind of on the sideline, or if there was something that he wasn't doing right, he would be more upset with himself, but he would show it. But at the same time, his partnership with Salah and Bobby, that was yet to come. And because Klopp was really developing that kind of position for Bobby at the time, I mean, what you said it yourself the other day, he was playing, more right back, left back, or whatever like that under, for a little bit under Brendan. And, the fact that Klopp saw in him that kind of football. I know the false nine has been around for quite a while, but I don't think anybody really defined it as much as Bobby did. And the fact that the way he played, it benefited Mané and Salah at the time, because they turned into two wide running strikers that just came inside, anytime Bobby was on the ball. Bobby was a workhorse, he'd drop back. Mané was the same, he would help out on that left-hand side, I mean, Robertson didn't have to do too much to cut off most of that angle, because, Mané would drop back, Salah would drop back. They didn't have to do much because we controlled the ball a lot, but when they did, and it was necessary in the big games, they did that. So the importance of Mané coming in just kind of set the ball rolling, I think, for the other signings that came in. I know we kind of got a steal on Salah, and we got him at the right time for the right price. But just even the price alone of Mané that we got him for, I think was a bit of a steal, considering that Edwards and Co and all these guys saw exactly what Mané could do.
You're totally right. I was arguing in a room of 10 people. I had this group class teaching these journalists who were covering the Premier League, and none of them thought that he was worth the money of 30 odd million. And I was arguing with each one of them, which is very good for their English. It's good to have an argument in another language. Telling them they were all goddamn wrong in different ways. And Sadio, I mean, that was one thing I got right. I get many wrong. But Sadio Mané, Neil, he ended up with the 2019 Premier League Golden Boot, or a share of. The Champions League, this European Super Cup, FIFA Club World Cup, African Footballer of the Year in 2019 as well. The Premier League, he won the AFCON in 2022, including the AFCON Player of the Tournament. The League Cup and the FA Cup. It's quite a magnificent haul of trophies for a magnificent player. Would you rate him up there with Barnes?
I think Barnes, if you do your all-time Liverpool 11, Barnes is the footballer who gets in ahead of him. But it is, certainly in however you want to define the modern era within reason, it is just Barnes. I think if you're looking for, it's worth saying Liverpool sort of pre-Dalglish in 87 didn't play with wingers, they played with wide midfielders. So it is a little bit like, Highway to an extent, Peter Thompson, obviously going back to Shankly, but that great team of Kennedy, Case, McDermott and Souness, none of them was a winger as such. They were midfielders who ghost around the pitch and find ways to impact the game. Mané was something different in 2017. There's something different compared to that. And he can be compared to Barnes, that he just about comes off second best, is testament to his brilliance. He's a genuine all-time Liverpool great. Sadio Mané. It's worth pointing out that first season, to put that in context, Sadio disappears off for AFCON at a key point during that campaign. And when he does, I think he plays the mad 2-2 draw we have to do against Sunderland. And that day we're second and we're 5 points behind Chelsea. We're probably Chelsea. It's when Conte's Chelsea are in and they're just putting a mad run together and no one can quite work them out or cope with them. And Sadio goes off to AFCON and we're abject in his absence. We're absolutely terrible. We barely win a game. I think we win a cup game. That's it. We're a real mess. And then Sadio comes back and he scores 2 when we beat Tottenham 2-0. And it was a massive, because the season, because the job of the season was to qualify for the Champions League, but it felt like it had gone off the rails. So we've gone from second. The day we beat Tottenham, when we beat them, we go a point behind them. We're still fourth and they're second. And then Sadio powers us through the next run of games. We beat Arsenal at Anfield. We beat Burnley. We draw with City at the Etihad, which is a hell of a result in this period. They're not going to win the league that season. And we beat Everton, and then he gets injured. And we end up, I think the day we beat Everton, where we go second. Oh no, we go a point behind. 3 points behind Spurs that day. So we're 3 off Spurs at that key moment. So we caught them back up. And then we end up limping over the line to fourth. there's that unbelievable 2-goal haul from Coutinho and Firmino at Stoke when we're a mess and Sadio's not there, but we managed to win that game. But the point is that, Emre Can scores the overhead kick against Watford. So we get the job done. But before Sadio goes, we're approximately not quite title-winning pace, but not far off. Sadio comes back. We go back to not quite title-winning pace, but not far off. And in the periods without Sadio, we find ourselves effectively going at best 4th or 5th pace, genuine scrap for the Champions League. And that is, as much as anyone else. Simon Mignolet actually plays really well in the running of that season. It's arguably his best period of games for Liverpool. He's integral to Liverpool getting over the line. But more than any other player in the season of 16-17, which is the season that kickstarts so much, it is Sadio Mané who is the main man who powers Liverpool back into the Champions League. And I think that is, it's such a significant season in our history because that leads to being confident enough to go out and to attract Salah, to get into a position to get Van Dijk, to move along and have the great European campaign that we then have, to then build the relationships on the pitch between that front three, to have the security to sell Coutinho because you've bought Salah and you've got Mané and you've got, Mané effectively almost displaces, turns Coutinho into an unbelievable luxury player in one way, but therefore one Liverpool feel they've got the security to sell for a huge amount of money. There are ways in which Sadio Mané's signing is almost as integral to the history of Liverpool without being in the all-time Liverpool 11. As much as someone like Ian St. John, as much as someone like Ron Yates, that idea of the footballer that kicks Liverpool onto a new plane. And yes, it's not the second division to the first division, which is what it was for players like St. John and Yates. But it's the idea of Liverpool being a team that bumbles around 6th, might have a good season and come 4th, into being a team that since then, with one blip season, ironically the one immediately after Sadio went, although if I'm honest, I don't think he would have been much use to us that year. I think we'd run the legs off him by then. But with the exception of that one blip season, back into genuine European powerhouses. Sadio Mané takes Liverpool from domestic also-rans, European also-rans, and is the most important single individual step to Liverpool returning to being on the pitch, because you can obviously talk about Klopp, but to being a genuine European and domestic powerhouse. It's a signing that you can't praise highly enough. And I think, and as part of all of that, he was in so many ways a joy to watch. And there are a huge number of games, even now, even having just watched the Champions last season, a phenomenal side, where every now and again I think, oh God, if these had peak Sadio Mané, imagine what they'd be like. And that's such an enormous compliment to him. And I think he's, genuinely one of the most important single signings in the whole history of the club, going all the way back to 1892. And I can't imagine higher praise given the glorious history of Liverpool.
I mean, I'm not sure who we signed in the run-up to being the Invincibles of 1925 or whenever that season was, but perhaps there was someone equally transformative then. But no, it's a very fair answer. I totally agree. Because when you're, it's one of those things, that thing's almost a cliche now. If you're going to have a lab and create a footballer, but you're going to create an inside forward to play in Sadio's position, you want power, you want strength, you want incredible technique, you want a great shot. He had all of those, along with fabulous effort, determination, defensive work. He just fills everybody with so much joy, everybody of a Liverpool persuasion just thinking about him. That season, Chelsea walked the league on 93 points. Tottenham finished second on 86 points. Man City finished third on 78. Liverpool finished fourth on 76. And Arsenal finished fifth on 75 points. So that goal by Gini Wijnaldum, who you began talking about, Shane, that goal against Middlesbrough at the end of that season, just to finish off that 16-17 season. We're talking about Sadio Mané as being one of the biggest signings in Liverpool's entire history. In terms of recent history, that win to get us just by 1 point ahead of Arsenal into the Champions League was massive, Shane. Absolutely huge.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we there. Now that we've been talking about it, and great points from Neil, from UK, from Owen, and I'm thinking about it. It was a spectacular season of goals. Like, there was just so many highlights from that. We talked about the overhead kick, Mane's first goal against Arsenal. There was just so many goals from that year that, like, even though we did finish fourth, I felt like we had, world-class finishes.
Absolutely. Let's move on. I'm going to put it on the screen for those who are on YouTube to the 17-18 season. If anybody, by the way, needs to duck out of this call at any point, just duck away. Absolutely no problem. Thank you very much if you do have to do that. But I'm just going to keep moving on. The 17-18 season, the Premier League winner was Manchester City. They signed in the summer of 2017 Bernardo Silva, Ederson, Kyle Walker, Danilo, and Benjamin Mendy. Ugh. And in the January, they signed Aymeric Laporte. Bernardo Silva, Ederson, and Kyle Walker were three absolutely transformative signings for them. Aymeric Laporte came and did a great job. But that was a big hit for Man City. And Liverpool ended up signing Mohamed Salah, Dominic Solanke, Andrew Robertson, they always put it formally Andrew, although I've never heard him, but actually, orally being called that. Andrew Robertson from Hull City and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain from Arsenal. Kev, what a window that was for us too. I don't know. Yeah. Who do you want to talk about from that?
I feel like it would have been Virgil van Dijk as well if Southampton weren't so stubborn, would it?
Well, that's it. In January, we ended up signing Virgil.
Yeah.
As well.
So, look. There's no point in me talking about Mo Salah. He speaks for himself. Andy Robertson, for me, and we only spoke about this recently, me and you, and I said that for me, Andy Robertson was pretty much a free transfer because of Kevin Stewart going the other way.
Yeah.
For me, so we had this kind of thing yesterday. We were talking about, Neil, where I said they were saying who's the best do you think free transfer that Liverpool ever got, and I said for me, look, everybody's going to say James Milner in recent seasons, along with Joel Matip, but then Macca back in the day. But I turn around and say Andrew Robertson, because I said for me, Kevin Stewart went the other way for 8 million. I said it wasn't a couple of years before we paid the add-ons. So if you want to call a straight transfer, I said it was 8 million for 8 million.
Yeah.
And so for me, I said Andy Robertson's the best free transfer in the history of Liverpool. Outside that, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was unlucky because he was just starting to come to fruition. He was actually playing really, really well up until that game against Roma, and he got that injury, and then after that, it was all downhill for him. There, so I was quite happy with where Alex was playing up until then. But yeah, look, if I want to talk about the most beneficial outside of the main guys that came in, probably Dominic Solanke, and fair dues to Michael Edwards, because Dominic Solanke barely kicked the football for us, and we got 35 million from him. So it's just I would say just paying that small amount for what was it called, the that money that you have to pay a club. Tribunal, that's it. Yep. So yeah, when you have to pay that money for that kind of guy, he made us a good sale. But as importance-wise, look, Salah's been fantastic for us. He'd go down as I have him on par as with Gerrard for me, and King Kenny, as probably the three most elite players that's ever played for Liverpool. And I put Alisson Becker probably in there as well, just because importance as a goalkeeper wise. But yeah, look, Andy Robertson free transfer for me is probably the most important. I think it's that run he made against. You see it everywhere still. That run, that amount of pressure that he put on the City backline that time. When he first came in, it took a while for Klopp to kind of. I don't think he fully got into the squad until maybe October, because Moreno was still being played at the start of that season. And Klopp really does. You could see that he really tried to give people opportunities to keep their position. Because he was loyal to players. But once Robertson came in and took over, that was. But we all saw that coming. We all knew it was kind of going to be the end for Moreno anyway. In the near future, but it's how quickly Robertson took to people's hearts and just his raw passion for the position and the team. He was a Celtic boy growing up, so you got to have some passion for the club. These kind of, they instill passion in you when you're growing up. So your Aberdeens up there and the likes of even Rangers and the likes of those guys, they all they create some great footballers that come down and play this way. But look, no, yeah, for me the most important in recent years, because we didn't really have a good left back for a long time, was Andrew Robertson. Because out of all of those guys, Salah, phenomenal, the one season wonder that turned into almost 10 season wonders, if you want to call him that way. Right. But so it's so Salah brilliant. Solanke made us a good few bit of money leaving, and also with that sale to Spurs. This is what I like about Liverpool recently, is because of this like 17.5 to 19.5% add-on that we've been adding to players for sell-on clauses. That's been making us these extra. It's pretty much paying for a top tier two players top wages in our squad, really getting that kind of money in, from these sell-ons. So you're talking like an extra 10 million, 12 million coming in, 5 million to one player, 5 million to another player, 2 million, whatever on top of that. But it's these kind of, it's just what Liverpool are doing off the pitch as well as on the pitch is what I like. A lot of people, me, Owen, I'm the most anti-transfer person on the planet because I think it brings out the crazies. But, but I do like seeing Liverpool get a good transfer across the line. But, and the thing about FSG being, they've made some mistakes in the past, because we are talking about FSG, but you don't see many owners coming out and then apologizing for some of the stuff that they've done. So I appreciate that they've done that, and I appreciate they haven't been the big spenders that most other clubs have been, but I don't think we would have seen the same kind of remorse from like, let's say if we had oil owners, or if we had anything like that. So I was always on the balance with FSG. I've seen them doing bad things, but then I've seen the club being run really, really well at the same time, and I think we're the best run club in the world at the moment, and I've seen that for many years. But it's very hard to tell people online who kind of only see the fantasy of how money is spent, and that's kind of hard to do and explain. So yeah,
but great answer. Go on, Nick.
I think something with Robertson, because something that happens approximately the same time as well, just before Robertson breaks through. If you remember, and I know it's not sort of the done thing to talk about him at the minute, but in the Hoffenheim game, home and away, Alexander-Arnold scores the free kick, and the manager all summer was being linked with a different type of midfielder, a more creative midfielder. And then in the end, one of the things that happens is that we get Naby Keita actually confirmed in the summer of 2017. But what Robertson and Alexander-Arnold do, and something which I think is a really underrated aspect of Klopp's management in general, and football management in general, is I think that there's parts of us that want football managers to have a wonderful, great, big, grand plan, and then put that plan into action, and then we all get to enjoy the genius of it and say, oh my God, isn't this fella brilliant, and isn't this team brilliant, and there was a big idea in the first place. But by the time we get to effectively the end of January, Liverpool are a different team to the one that they've been the previous summer. And it's not just because Philip Coutinho has moved on. It's that Liverpool have chosen to play a certain way where there's an enormous amount of creative pressure on the fullbacks to produce results. And Liverpool are actually becoming, and it happens to Dominic Solanke in a different way. Solanke's obviously, you go on and look at the career that he's had. He's obviously a really good signing, but the team he signs for at the moment he's bought is going to accelerate past the level where he's able to meaningfully contribute at any sort of point. Firmino, Salah and Mané are going to go to a level that means that just bringing Solanke in makes it exceptionally difficult. I think this season he starts a bit of a mad game away at Stoke when we're trying to rest people midweek, and he starts up front with Sturridge, and then there's a bit of a funny team selection, and then the manager brings everyone on effectively on the hour mark who we've been trying to rest, and then we get the game won. But they've effectively took the hammer, as it were, of starting that game against Stoke and going from there. So Solanke is a good example of a team for sheer quality, just getting its level above where he's able to meaningfully contribute. But I think that Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, because of their ability to create and the hard running and their fundamental quality, take the manager then makes decisions to build around that and have that supplement his wide forwards, who can then come even narrower and be even more dangerous around the penalty area and get closer and closer to goal. And Klopp doesn't start the 17-18 season thinking, you know what, by the end of the 2018, when we go into that summer, we'll have the most creative fullback partnership in the entirety of Europe. He doesn't think that. But what Robertson and Alexander-Arnold become is that. And then he's able to continue that run, continue that team and build and build. And what Robertson, I think, signifies really well is, I think Liverpool in this, full stop. And I think Klopp's a big part of it, but I think the backroom staff's a big part of it. They're very, very good at getting the right characters in, but also very, very good at getting players who can and could, but not necessarily will, develop. So they give themselves the wiggle room. They give themselves the wiggle room of, we think this fella's a 7 or 8 out of 10, but you never know, he could be a 10. We think that he could do this, and this for us, but if he does this and this as well, what a footballer we've got. So I think that Liverpool thought in Robertson they were buying a good player, and in the end they get a great one. I think that they were obviously excited because of his talent, his obvious talent about Trent Alexander-Arnold, but what they end up with and the way in which it builds this team and where it takes this team is something which I think is just fundamentally so exciting. But I think it's also, at the same time, I think it's brilliant coaching and brilliant management, and allowing yourself to be swept along with your players and the quality of your players and harness that is a massive part of football management. And I think that this is a period where it's not quite that everything Klopp is touching is turning to gold. I still think in the 2018 final, when Salah gets injured, he should actually have brought Solanke on rather than Lallana. I don't feel as though he's getting absolutely everything absolutely right. I also think to the point made there a minute ago about Oxlade-Chamberlain from Kev, I think there's a point to be made that I think if Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't get the injury against Roma, Liverpool don't suffer as much in the final if Salah goes off injured, because
I agree.
they still have to use Oxlade-Chamberlain's power and pace to replace Salah at that point. But I think that the better roll of the dice might well have been Solanke, but Klopp very much had hierarchies within the way in which he managed the squad, and that's absolutely fair enough. But it's not that everything he touched turned to gold, but almost everything he touched turned to gold. And Robertson and Alexander-Arnold in this period are great examples of it.
Yeah, it's an excellent answer. The strategy you were saying, to buying players who may well, become 10 out of 10 players. Solanke was one of them. He was only 19 when we signed him. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was another one. Looking at his stats, a few stats from that season for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I mean, it's going to be small on lots of people's screens on YouTube, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to read them out anyway. Oxlade-Chamberlain played 35 matches in the Premier League out of 38. It's quite surprising. So he scored 3 goals and made 7 assists. In the Champions League, 7 matches, 2 goals, including one extremely memorable one in the 4-3 victory against Manchester City. And this is a moment where, if we're looking at players and moments and the history of FSG and how they've turned us from, dragged us from the doldrums, up into the stratosphere of victory, then again, it's the effort of players like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain to score goals against Manchester City, and of course, ultimately, Man City, they've won the league for the past 5 seasons. They've had, they've picked us to the league. They've been, I hate to say it, but better than us in it. I can be completely honest, because what I would suggest is a completely cheating way that is not fair in the slightest. So there's no glory in their victory, but we know that. We don't need to go down there. But in terms of turning us into contenders, this 17-18 season, especially when we signed Van Dijk, and players getting performances out of players such as Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain that were just superb. He was so dynamic, and it was suddenly, you could tell, you knew, and he's come to admit it, Guardiola and anyone else at the top, Chelsea's manager, whoever it was back then, everybody was looking at Liverpool going, holy smokes. Shane, do you remember how it felt to be, because it was like for us as fans, it was like, okay, we've had this qualifying back for the Champions League, but we've now got Salah, we've got Bobby, we've got our front 3, including the genius of Sadio Mané. And it just felt like, with Robertson, Trent, it just felt like so many of the players, when you were looking at the lineup, you just loved, didn't you? What do you remember about that time, Shane? Finally feeling like we're going to win every match, or at least we could win every match.
Yeah, absolutely. It was transformative. It was amazing to watch the team before your eyes when you're struggling to get fourth transcend that to being legitimate contenders. I am looking at these matches. It does remind me of the time period whenever people would say Klopp didn't respect any of the cups because we had very early exits in the domestic cups. But this season, if I had a time machine and could go back and relive any season, it might be this one. It might be 17-18, even though it didn't end in trophies necessarily, but you just weren't expecting it. And then not only that, but that semifinal that against AS Roma, the 5-2, I was I was elated. It was the equivalent to the kind of joy that I had as a child, like for the 2002 World Cup. Like it just brought back this childlike passion for me. And so, yeah, if you're asking how I felt, this one's very high up there for me. It's the first in the whole, I don't know, it's not the first in the Klopp saga, but yeah, this one, it was just out of this world.
I mean, for the audio listeners, I just put up an image of the Champions League 5-2 Liverpool against Roma, that semi-final. I mean, to be 5-0 up, it's still that goal, Shane, from Mohamed Salah. He's not celebrating, but he found the postage stamp, you know, that place where the bar and post meet. And I still haven't seen it since. I don't think I've seen it before. Actually getting it, actually hitting the postage stamp. I can't remember. Am I missing something? Has anyone done it?
Is it? Stanchion, is that what it's called?
Well, the stanchion, yeah, but the postage stamp being that actual top corner that everyone is ideally aiming for. Yes, it just clipped the bar or whatever, or both. I don't know as it went in, but it was absolutely the most accurate top corner shot you could ever see. I don't know. So where were you watching it? Were you watching it in the LA supporters bar at?
Oh, I actually, at the time, I was working as a barista, and so I had the match up on my phone, and I was in the back, and I was making my other coworker serve the customers while I was literally jumping up and down, screaming in the back. But it's fine. But again, part of the story of this whole season, all of these goals are against Alisson Becker, and so it's just in the whole story and the continuity of it all. Now, how we feel about Alisson Becker and the love and everything else, this one, you go back and you're like, I can't even believe you're on the other side.
Absolutely. I mean, I say it to this day, you can beat Alisson Becker, but you just got to beat him with the perfect shot into the perfect area of the goal. That's how you beat him. He does leave the perfect shot open every single time. And we happened to get 5 of them that day. Do you remember that, Kev? That game, or I mean, obviously you remember it, but what do you remember about it?
Well, this is a couple of years before I had my season tickets, so because I was waiting a long time since 1985 for mine, but it was still, it's I was watching it with my brother, and I was trying to get, once I knew we were going to the final, I was trying to get final tickets everywhere, and I didn't, and obviously rightly so. Like I probably would have had my season tickets, like I said earlier, only for, I think, Neil, you might remember this, back in 99, 2000, they changed the policy to the L4 postcode, and rightly so, because obviously people from Liverpool should get the season tickets first. But I had to take a different route, and I had to go kind of like hospitality a bit higher just to kind of get mine. But it's before that, and I was watching it with my brother at the time, and I just remember watching it and thinking, the fact that we got that result, we got those 2 goals late scored against us in that game, I didn't worry too much. And then when we got over to Rome, it was kind of, we were almost, on our kind of last legs at that stage. You could see that the team was tiring down a bit. We were still doing the job, but you could see that we were tiring a bit. This is the first kind of implementation of the Klopp heavy metal ideology of running, non-stop runnings, closing down those spaces. It's why we were talking about Gini Wijnaldum earlier, and we're saying he didn't get much touches in the game, but he closed down those spaces, when we were going defensive. And even though if he didn't touch the ball or intercept or anything, you couldn't get an angle past him at certain times. So he was very, very clever in that way. And then we said afterwards, why were we missing Gini Wijnaldum so much when he left? It's because of the drop off a little bit of Henderson and Fabinho, and we probably wouldn't have missed Gini as much if those lads were on form, because I think if those 2 guys were on form, anybody could have come in and played in that midfield. I heard something interesting just recently in the last few days, that you find that not many players are world class, but you can have a world class midfield. Where you're talking about maybe Henderson wasn't world class in his own, Fabinho, he was of a gold standard of thing, but maybe individually these guys weren't the utmost of world class, but together as a midfield they were world class. So that's kind of what these kind of little midfields were made up of. When you're talking about this game against Roma, Salah, you're talking about the season where he came in, he had a point to prove. He had to show everybody that he wasn't a failure at Chelsea, that he was just played wrong, he was under the wrong manager, he was at a game at the wrong time. He even says it to this day, he wished he'd come to Liverpool first, but then that could have changed either way because he didn't have Klopp, he didn't have that team. So, all of these kind of if, buts and maybes, they don't work. He came at the right time to Liverpool. Liverpool was, at this stage, was perfect for him, and he was perfect for Liverpool in that position. There's a reason why he's had no competition since he joined the team. We've never bought a player that really competes with him. We've only tried to grow him out of the the academy. Ben Doak was the next thing we could talk about. Or maybe Ben Doak will take over from Salah. No, because I mean, Salah, you look at these guys, they don't drink, you look at Salah, you look at these guys, they don't drink, they don't do anything, they look after themselves. This is why Salah, the longevity of these players, Messi, Ronaldo, all of these guys, they look after themselves. They can play right up until their 40s. And so when I was thinking, why is everybody saying get rid of Salah now? Yeah, he might make the zigzag runs that he used to make, a few years ago, but his importance to scoring goals in a football team, his link-up play when he's got the right players around him, is second to none. And it's so hard to even look past that. You can, if he had a jump off of a cliff where he went down to only maybe 10 goals a season or something like that, then you'd question it. But he's not. He's still hitting the high levels, and this is why I'm seeing all of these little narratives taking place. For me, it's just wishful thinking from rival fans that put the narrative out there, and they kind of say, "Oh, Salah, he's finally fallen off that cliff," and he's not. Golden boot winner again.
Too long on Musk's platform.
I love him.
Too long.
No, but I just say you kind of bring him down to your, you kind of just say, you kind of give them the information that they need, which is that they need to see that Salah was never that kind of player that was only going to come in and play for these couple of seasons and go like he did at Chelsea. He became one of the greatest living legends in Liverpool's history. And if he's the kind of gold standard that you go to, that's him, Ronaldo, Messi. I put all of these guys, I know he didn't score as much goals as these guys, but I put him up there because of how he looks after himself, his longevity. It's hard to say. But look, in that game against Roma, it's just going into the final is what I'm thinking about next. But that, it was a fantastic season so far, up until that point. And losing Oxlade-Chamberlain, as I was saying to Neil earlier, was probably one of the biggest things that could happen to us. Kind of like losing Henderson in that red card against Man City in 13-14 is very, very similar, I think. So, yeah.
Well, on to the final. We're not going to talk about the final, but just after the final, Neil, and we'll wrap up here at the end of 17-18 season. We've lost the final. Klopp sang drunkenly, and his friend videoed it, how we would be back, that we'd bring it back to Liverpool. They had all the fucking luck, as I seem to recall. And it was a great song, brilliant song. Surprised it didn't really catch on at the Kop. But did you believe him, Neil, at that point, that we were going to come straight back?
Yeah. In the summer of 2018, because of my slightly mad job, I did loads of media, and I was asked to predict for the following season, what do you think will happen? What do you think will happen in 2018-19? And I said, Liverpool will be record breakers. Liverpool will be the team that get the most points ever in the Premier League and finishes second. Because I was aware I was watching a great team, and I often get asked to predict things and I get a lot of things wrong, but I couldn't have got that one more right in the end, the direction of travel that it went in. Because you'd just been watching, a truly tremendous outfit. Towards the end of the season, not a perfect one. It's worth pointing that out. Even post Van Dijk signing, there were imperfections. We've already mentioned the goalkeeper, but there were other areas where there still needs to be more coaching and more refinement. But what 2018 was all the way through was a massive party. In terms of Klopp singing the song, in order to jump ahead, what I think is absolutely fascinating is that there's no comparison the following year. There's no images of Klopp out. There's no images of Klopp partying with supporters or with people. There's not even any images of Klopp particularly partying with the players. And I was lucky enough to actually be at the players' party later on. And by the time I got there was neither sight nor sound of Jurgen Klopp. And I think it tells you a lot about sort of his character. When the job's well done, the job's well done. But until that point, you've got to work, and you've got to work in a variety of ways. You've got to, there's all the stories of him leading the players' party after he got beat in the Europa League final in 2016. That he was like, "Why is everyone miserable? This is just the start of something, not the end." And that is sort of the nature of him as a leader and as a person. That you party when you get beat, and you take a measure of deep satisfaction when you win, and you publicly want to encourage and to cajole and to bring everyone together in the hard times. And when the times go well, you let the people do their own thing and enjoy themselves the way in which they want to do that, and that is a great, a big part of what he was about. But what we were watching, in that season, 17-18, in that run, the first time Liverpool had played a Champions League knockout game since 2009, they go to Porto and score 5 goals. If you couldn't have been excited or overwhelmed by that. You're just not paying attention. Okay, but what happens the next time they get to a champion, the next first leg of the next round? Well, they beat the team that are going to get 100 points in England 3-0, and they decimate them for 45 minutes and then defend for their lives for 45 minutes. And yes, in the end this season, 17-18, they almost do limp over the line for Champions League qualification again. I think it goes down to either the last game or the second to last game. But we had other things to do. We were in the process of, we scored 5 goals by the 70th minute in the first leg of a Champions League semi-final. Who does that? Who does that? What football team, what other football team that you'd seen in your life do that? They just go and do that. They put 5 past them by the 70th minute. So you knew you were seeing genuine greatness. To Shane's point before about, the ways in which he has this as his favourite season. When I wrote the book about Klopp, I argued that 2019 could well be the greatest year that any football team has ever had. But that despite it all, if I could relive one year, it'd be 2018. And the part of why 2018 was so special was you felt like 2019 was just around the corner. Like it wasn't the promised land. 2019 was the promised land. 2018 was the journey to get to the promised land altogether. And that's why 2018 was, it was that exciting. And I'm with Shane on that. As I say, you can. It's brilliant to win, and we've really enjoyed it recently. But what is the most exciting bit is that moment when it clicks in your brain that, oh my God, these are so special. They're going to win. They're so special. And that's what happens in this calendar year of 2018 all the way through. It starts off with them scoring that mad goal against Burnley that we mentioned before with Clavan. And in December 2018 is when Origi scores the late goal against Everton to make it 1-0. And you think of all the games that happen in that gap with these players that we've talked about and all the brilliance of them all the way through. I think it's remarkable. What a calendar year, what a way to sort of go about it, to have done all that in that year. And by the end of it isn't just that Liverpool look like one of the best teams in Europe, it's that Liverpool just look like because they are the biggest party in Europe. And that was massively because of the signings, but it was also because of the way Klopp demanded that you enjoy it at every single point.
And there's something about that, isn't there? How you phrased it beautifully, but how he picked people up and insisted that you have a good time regardless. Life is for living, and you take the bad with the good, and you cherish it. And that's something that positivity and that lust for life that Jurgen had is something that is just so contagious, even amongst the fans around the world. Shane, just a final little thing to sort of step back and zoom back and look at the context of the Jurgen Klopp, where he took us from. That first lineup, Shane, he had in Jurgen Klopp's first lineup in 2015, just 3 years before, or not even 3 years before the Champions League final. We had Mignolet in goal. We had a back four of Sacco, Skrtel, Nathaniel Klein, and Albi Moreno. We had a midfield 3 of Emre Can or Chun, Lucas Leiva and James Milner, and we had a front 3 of Coutinho, Lallana and Origi. And to take that team, turn into what it was in less than 3 years, of course we're going to remember Jurgen forever, but we're going to remember him for the way he made us feel, but just for the actual genius of what he did to change that team around in such a short amount of time. Look where Man United are now with Ruben Amorim, 16th position. They're going to be nowhere near in 3 years, are they? I don't know. What do you think about, how far he'd taken us in such a short amount of time? It's truly remarkable.
It's a testament to how Klopp would say, from the doubters to believers. And that was, like we were talking earlier, that 2018 year. It's definitely when you started to believe, you really were believing that we were going to get over the line. And like what Neil said, the biggest party in Europe. It was just truly, there's just, he just really delivered on his promises. And then not only that, but I remember at just this point in time, it felt like every post-match press conference, it was some sort of philosophical nugget of wisdom, was like a kernel of truth about that you could apply to your own life. His Klopp was very philosophical, and so like these are the times that I really latch on. But also, honorable mention. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I mean I might mess up my timeline. Wasn't this whenever he had his original assistant? What's his name? Bovac? Was it Bovac? Please correct me.
Zelko Buvac. I think about him twice a week, every week.
Yeah, I think about him too, and like even now. So this is during his period before he left the club, right?
I think he'd actually left by the time we got to the final. I think he left. I don't know when he left.
He leaves at approximately March or April 18.
Right. Yeah, because he wasn't there at the final. I did remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just before, whatever happened. Any idea what happened, Neil? Do you have some kind of insider knowledge?
Other than, as was reported almost at the time, which was that him and Klopp always had quite a tempestuous relationship, and it just went one bit of tempestuousness too far, and they felt that one or the other of them felt like they couldn't coexist in the building anymore, and that was the end of that. I don't think there was any sort of, to act as though there was one falling out, I think would be inaccurate. I think it would be more accurate to say that the entire relationship was based on combustible fallings out, and it's worth saying that a lot of that is Liverpool, full stop, in this period. Edwards is a notoriously argumentative character. There's nothing wrong with that. Klopp is a very argumentative character behind the scenes. Edwards a very argumentative character. Everyone's got opinions. Everyone puts them forward. But people, from time to time do fall out. I suspect, I can say with a certain level of certainty that Klopp and Edwards never fell out to anywhere near the degree with which Klopp and Buvac have fallen out. But there can be a point at which all this stuff can be tiring for everyone. But no, there was, and the really interesting Buvac thing is that it isn't as though he's ever gone on and done anything else anywhere else. He sort of disappeared a little bit in quite an obscure way. But Kravitz remains alongside Klopp. Pep Linders, his role increases, and there was a bit of people worrying that Buvac was the brains of the operation, not least because of stuff himself that Klopp said. But I think we can probably say that was not true, given the fact that the operation went to go on strength to strength.
Well, he's now the sporting director at Dynamo Moscow. According to, I just Googled him, Wikipedia. Wow. 63 years old now. His birthday, September the 13th. I'm going to send him a birthday card, see if he'd agree to an interview. Not that I want to know the ins and outs. I just want to know about his time, at Liverpool, and I don't want to know what they fell out about specifically, because it was obviously something serious that deeply, disturbed both of them, I'd imagine. But but it's just, I hope he's well. Anyway, that will more or less bring it to the end of this episode. Thank you so very much to Shane and to Kev and to Neil for joining me in this a saunter down memory lane, a sort of a jolly skip and a hop, skip and a jump down memory lane, because it's been an absolute pleasure. Neil, what's going on at the Anfield Wrap these days?
Just loads of shows. So if people want to get involved or check out what we're doing, then we're always doing something.
Is it hot in Liverpool? It's 40 degrees here.
It is. It's hot today. It was not particularly hot yesterday, although the problem is that the temperature is very consistent from day to night at the moment. This is the overwhelming problem, and as is often said about this island, which has so many flaws, but one of them is completely understandably all of our buildings are built to keep heat in, and they do so, I would say, relentlessly at this time of year. They very much fulfill their brief at this time of year. They keep the heat in, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow. Well, my little boy, he's a toddler, 2 years old. He's got an excellent, very useful sized bath that is very good, because you fill the bath and you put your feet in there in a cool, put some ice in the water, and that works to cool anyone off. It was 40 degrees yesterday. We were both sat there with our feet in his bath going, this is great. This is this is living when a heat wave. Kev, are you doing all right in Ireland? What's going on?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's only been 20 odd degrees, or between 19 and 20 odd. Even though I'm down south in Cork.
Jealous.
But it's it's been good. It's been hefty. I was in Munich a couple of weeks back, and that was around 40 degrees, and that was and we had to perform, and that like right in the middle, the sun teeming in your faces or trying to sing. And it was nuts, but it was it was great. I'm enjoying the heat, but not at night time, as Neil says. It's just not great at all. I'm just waking up every day with just clammy hands, and and I'm just like, I'm a man in my 40s, and I never used to sweat, but now I've learned what sweating is. So yeah, it just doesn't. Yeah, me and heat don't get along. I can get along with it as long as there's a breeze there. If it's too hot, you'll just find me someplace with a cold pint, and I'm just hugging it until it gets warm, and then I find the next one. That's about it. Yeah.
There you go. I recommend the bath trick, and stick as many bottles of water in the fridge as you can. But here we are, us, sort of British, Irish wimps, Shane, talking about the heat. I don't know if 20 or 40 degrees means anything to you because you're in Fahrenheit. I do know 98 Fahrenheit is 36 degrees because I looked that up the other day. So, yeah, around about the 100 mark here. That's sort of par for the course in LA, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because the whole time I was trying to do the math in my head, and that was never going to work out. No, so here's the thing. We're now at the period. Yeah, you're right. It is hot, but we're at the period where like I have like my winter flannel sheets, and I'm just too lazy to change them. And I keep waking up, and I'm like in a silhouette of my own sweat, and I'm just like, I gotta figure out some cooling solutions. But Kev just came out with an album with his band, and I actually downloaded that, and I'm loving it. It's
thanks, Shane. Cool. Yeah, you like it? Yeah. What's your favorite song?
Right now it's The Divine. I really do appreciate.
We did a music video for that one. Yeah.
Is your voice a baritone?
I have no idea, dude. I just, I sing rock, and that's what I try to do, and that's it. I mean, most of the time I'm between the rock show and the original band. So I mean, we in Munich we did an original set for one set of stages, and then we went off to another set, and then we played to about 20,000 people just singing other people's songs. So it was like, it's been pretty cool. But baritone probably be the closest to that or soprano maybe. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. And how can people check out your album, Kev, before we go? I'd love to hear how people can download it.
Yeah, you can find it. Yeah, just look at the Blackwater Hush for the original stuff. And you'll find us there anywhere you can look, really, that music comes out on. And you'll find us for the Hush, which is a rock revival show. And that's where we go. We just go around Europe playing for rallies and different cities' birthdays and stuff like that. And I'm enjoying it because we're like in season now. So it's off season is the best time to kind of catch us at normal venue gigs and stuff. So yeah.
Marvelous stuff. Well, there you go. Do check it out, listeners. Bit of rock and roll. There you go. Thank you so much to Shane and to Kev and to Neil. And this has been Kop On. This has been part 3 of our FSG transfer extravaganza bonanza. We'll see you soon. So take care. And thanks in the chat. I just seen, because I'm so disorganized.
I've been talking.
People have been in the chat. Okay. Yeah, you've been in the chat, Spider. I've only just had a look at it now. Thank you so much to Gary and to Bongo, who were making comments throughout that. And I'll be more organized next time, I promise. Thank you very much.
I keep telling myself the same.
See you soon. Great.
Marvelous stuff, gents.